Every once in a while I come to you and say, we need to have a come to Jesus discussion. And today is not that. Instead, I need to have a come to Jesus discussion with myself because up until 2015, you and I never drove Lexus together. And that's because I just wasn't that excited about Lexus. But then in September of that year, we went to New York and we drove the RCF on Monticello Motor Club and met Yaguchi-san. And that was somewhat of a religious experience, and not just because I'm biased about the track. The car was pretty damn good, and Yaguchi-san is super cool. And my wheels started to turn in my brain. So then, a couple months later, we drove the new RX, and now granted, I wouldn't call that exciting, but it was comfortable, like a comfortable pair of jeans, but a very good pair of jeans at that. And then we drove the GSF, and the only way to describe that, it is like a contrarian investor in the world of turbocharging of today. And then we drove Santa Maria Madre di Dios, that LC500, and that's not just the way it drives, it's not just the way it looks, there's a swagger to it, and who would have thunk in 1990 that a Lexus would have had a swagger? And then in September, we drove this, and this changed my thinking of Lexus. I stopped saying, you know, I'm not a Lexus guy, but it's just, I like it. And then, last but not least, we drove that ES, and granted, that's more of the most Buick Lexus there is, but it was still pretty damn good. So let's kind of circle back and go drive the one Lexus we haven't driven yet that we need to drive, and that is adding an H to the end of LC500. Okay, so here's the script. You and I have driven many Toyota and/or Lexus hybrids in the past, but none of them have looked anything like this. None of them have had this like flash tachometer, speedometer thing that when you press this button, it goes off to the side and reveals tricks. And absolutely, positively, none of them have had an orange interior. So with that, let's go into Sport Plus mode and put our foot into a Toyota hybrid. Now, in fairness, the last version of the LC500 that you and I drove had the V8. Oh my God, it actually sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Especially when you consider it's a hybrid and a V6. Ooh, I like that. Are we really in a hybrid? Anyway, it's not the V8, V6 with two electric motors and sort of two transmissions as we talked about in the tech review. Now, the thing that we got here is an additional 155 pounds to add for that propulsion system, the batteries, all the packaging. So let's put our foot into it with an elevation change coming out of this wonderful turn here and see if we still can have the same amount of fun. It doesn't really have the same, I've told you this term in previous episodes, the thrasas, as the Greeks say, but it's still got some get up and go, and granted the traction control likes to get in, interrupt a bit more with the hybrid model, but it's still, she's quick. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off in that LS, as in Sam, 500h episode of the sedan, where I shocked some of you Prius faithful with the combo Evey motors and transmissions, plural, that were in that car that conspired to make a CVT, which it had, drive like a real geared transmission, which it also had. I know, surprising. And that got to the point where the hybrid was now in contention of being a serious car you would consider over the V8. Well, let's dig a bit deeper into understanding what all this stuff does. So remember, there's the V6 here, same deal here, but then there's electric motor number one. That is a starter generator motor, that's all it does. Then there's the 4-speed automatic transmission, real gears in a hybrid from a Toyota Lexus product. Then there's a second electric motor. Now this is the one we're more excited about because it's the one that sends the torque from 0 to the rear wheels as God intended in this vehicle in EV mode or in hybrid mode. And then there's the CVT. Now, if I'm honest, I've been driving this thing now 7 to 8 days, and it's the same experience as in driving the sedan. I would argue better because this transmission is more suited to the personality of the LC, not the LS. I know there's a lot of letters here that are confusing. So now that we know that the transmission works here as well as there, there's a lot of moving parts. How does that impact the driving dynamics? It's virtually indistinguishable from the regular LC500 V8. Now, in fairness, this one is quite a bit different than the one we drove. That burgundy car, beautiful car, man, that had the four-wheel steering. This does not. So what's happening is there's a bit more lean. But remember what we talked about in the LC500 episode, how you kind of feel like this is like Cruella DeVille's car where you're sitting all the way in the back. It's got that odd, like Morgan driving dynamics, proportion kind of stuff. This, you feel it a bit more because the rear steer is not helping you. So you get that lean, but it feels like it's coming from the center or the front of the car rather than the back. As a matter of fact, the rear stays a bit more planted. My guess is that's the extra weight and the packaging of the batteries that's impacting where the rear wheels are on the road. So I'm kind of driving aggressively here on a Sunday. There's a lot of people out. We're two guys and we're hiking, getting ready for their hike in a Subaru. And they're just giving me a dirty look as I go quicker around corners in this funky looking Lexus. Like, look at that terrible person driving aggressively and driving to have fun. Why can't you be a tree hugger and not like the world and be apoplectic like us? And now for something completely different, taking this car totally out of its comfort zone, and that's going downhill on very aggressive roads. Please, really don't try this at home. And if you remember in the V8 version of this car, it had a lot of weight over the front. It was something like 54 over the front, 46 in the back, and you noticed it. Here, it's a little bit better. It's 52, 48, but you still feel like you're under-braked. So remember when we were down in San Diego with Charlie, the hybrid electric vehicle expert dog co-host of mine, he was sharing not only the packaging, but also the chemical formulation of the batteries in the Avalon hybrid version. And basically what he found out was Toyota was doing a little bit of cost cutting by making those batteries nickel metal hydride. Well, apparently in Lexus, the same does not apply. It is a lithium-ion battery pack specifically made up of 84 cells. So apparently what's good for the goose is not always good for the gander. Okay, so let's back off to eco mode and let's try something a bit different. Let's try a little bit of traffic here. We got a Subaru that's in front of us. Never like having Subarus in front of us, so let's pass this guy here. See how this works in town, because after all, hybrid mainly, the purpose is driving it around town. So in this mode, put our foot into it, let's pass the Subaru. Don't want to speed too much because PCH, it's not a matter of an if, you will get caught. And there's plenty of power. It's not like you feel like you're in a Prius where you got to put your foot to the floor to get the system to work. The thing is designed for more sporty use than it is full fuel economy. Now, in full disclosure, I'm doing around 23 mpg in my entire time driving it, and I've not been babying the car, which is not bad. It's only a little bit less than what Toyota and the federal government say. And we got a truck coming in front of us here. The Toyota and the federal government say in terms of mpg around town. So if I were to be nicer to the car, probably would get better fuel economy, which is amazing to think in a 4,400 pound car, especially one that looks like this. Okay, now we're coming to a stop at a red light. Let's do that. Let's just stop here, put on the EV mode and see how that goes. We're in hold, and let's start crawling here. EV mode, see how fast we can go until the EV kicks in. Now I tell you, I've tried to engage this thing and try to make it a full EV, and the system, it really does want to be a hybrid, which makes me think, I don't know why they don't make this a full, okay, we just switched to the gas mode, but I don't know why they don't make it a full EV. And that's something that scratched my head with this whole thing, because in the time you drive it around town, why couldn't they give us an extra, like, I don't know, 50 miles of range, and be able to be a plug-in hybrid with such a cool looking car and then use the power when you're out, say, driving between Los Angeles and San Francisco so it can fit in today's infrastructure. This boggles my mind. I don't know why they do this, because especially when they've engaged or really channeled the future or show car look of this thing, why not give it a more flash propulsion system? It certainly isn't the money. So as my time with the LC500H draws to a close, I'm a bit perplexed, if I'm honest. If there's something to do with the LC500, but also something to do with the BMW i8. Now, if you remember in the LC500 episode, I really liked that. Like more than I thought I would. This, I like a lot too, just not as much. Even though I love that it has the orange interior and a sunroof. Granted, it ain't perfect, sunroof don't open, but still, really like this. Maybe it's the peg down. Where I get perplexed is when I think about the i8. That, like this, brings a show car to life, which you can't argue with. That, above this, is constructed of very high-tech materials that frankly come from the US, which I'm very proud of. This, not so much. However, it too brings two propulsion systems together in a very good-looking package. And that, I don't know if you need it. I don't know if you need economy and hybrid in something that looks like this. I think what the choice should be is the V8, which is magnificent. Or in the case of an i8, just throw in the engine from an M5 and call it a day. Or just forget the hybrid and put in a full electric motor in this thing. Because if you look at the price for both, this is $101 the way it sits, and that BMW i8 that was sitting just over there, that was $148,000. So I don't think people that are going to turn up for something like this are really saying, well, if you charge me an extra 25 grand for a car that has 150 miles range, I don't think they're going to balk at that. Now, I am just one man, so I'm going to turn this around to you guys, and my question is going to be rather simple here, but it has an impact because I know the folks at Lexus are going to watch this. Would you want a full electric version of this, or should there be a hybrid? Why or why not? And if you said yes to an EV version of this, how much would you realistically be willing to pay? Don't come up with something like, oh, I'll pay $1,500 extra. That ain't gonna happen. What realistic number would you be willing to pay for a full EV version of this? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV on Word, MotoManTV on Word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I'm gonna say again, I still love this thing just a bit more with an orange interior. Who would have thunk? Until I see you next time, bis später.